أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. Yesterday we were discussing the subject of interrelationship between various attributes of God as mentioned in the first verse of the Surah Al-Fatiha. Also, I mentioned that there is an internal order which is very significant, and as a whole, right from the start, that is Al-Hamd, till the end, Malik Yawmiddin, the order itself also carries a message. Today I want to point out to you that looking at these verses, Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen, Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim, Malik Yawmiddin, you will come to learn that it is in fact an essence of every religion which has been described in these verses. The journey of every religion begins with Al-Hamd. That opens the door to all religions. Ultimately, man can reach God through the door of Al-Hamd. If that door is closed, there can never be any relationship between man and his Lord. So Al-Hamd is highly important and significant, and this one single word in fact is the essence of all types of worship which were ever devised or dictated by any religion. The central theme of every worship is Al-Hamd, and the central theme of human relationship also is Al-Hamd. Once you come into contact with your Lord through the door of Al-Hamd, you return to mankind a changed man. And that Hamd which you have been praising, with which you have been singing Allah's hymns, deeply affects your character. And when you return to the people, that is the human beings, you return as a Mahmud, one who himself has been colored with the Hamd with which you have been praising your Lord. So that is the Khalq-e Akhar, a different creation in you. And that is what is required. As you well know, religion can be described in two words or two sentences. One, the art of attaining to God, the art of being in communion with God, with your Lord, or the science of paying the dues of Allah which are due to His creation. This is one way of looking at religion. Another way is to describe religion as that perfection, teachings or code of life which gives perfection to human relationship and human conduct with relation to each other. These are the two aspects of religion. Every religion has or must have these two aspects, otherwise that religion will be incomplete to that extent. So, if you look at Al-Hamd, this is the essence of all religion in itself. Of that I have also spoken earlier, that Hamd can be treated both subjectively and objectively. This is an infinitive which means both. So Al-Hamd also signifies the same thing when you look at it from these two angles. Subjectively it will mean you are praising Allah, and objectively it will mean you are praising Allah, and subjectively it will mean you are getting the attributes of Allah yourself, acquiring the attributes of Allah yourself. Now, once you enter the door of Al-Hamd, then you ultimately reach Malik Yawmiddin. This is what is described in nutshell. But you reach Malik Yawmiddin in various stages. In the first instance, you must learn the art of Rububiyyah. You must learn what Rububiyyah means, and by that, when you learn Rububiyyah, and you will yourself become a sort of Ra to the people around, then Hamd will have completed its circle with regard to Rububiyyah. When you learn what Rahmaniyat is, and try to be Rahman to others, then again the Alhamd would have gone full circle and completed the whole import, and you would become a sort of Rahman. The same applies to Rahimiyyah. But ultimately, you reach Malik Yawmiddin, the possessor of all ends, the possessor of the day of judgment, and the possessor of everything ultimately and absolutely. As I explained earlier, Malik Yawmiddin also means the one who possesses the thing to the exclusion of all others. There is no one who possesses a thing along with him, even temporarily. That stage comes true. And in that stage, the meaning of Malik Yawmiddin is reached in its full glory. That period when everybody else is dispossessed, even of the transient things he possessed earlier, and everything returns to Allah in its completion. That is the true expression of Malik Yawmiddin, true manifestation of Malik Yawmiddin. So whatever you do, Malik Yawmiddin signifies that you will ultimately reach him. Whether you follow the path of Al-Hamd or make a short circuit to him, you are destined to reach Malik Yawmiddin anyway, willy-nilly. But if you follow the course open through Al-Hamd, then you will witness your Lord as Rabb and as Rahman and Rahim, and whatever is in store for you is either Rububiyyat or Rahmaniyat or Rahimiyyat. Nothing of the negative sense of these attributes will be rewarded to you. If you make a short circuit and do not meet your Lord ultimately, passing through this passage of Rububiyyat and Rahmaniyat and Rahimiyyat, then all the negative aspects of these attributes are in store for you. And that is what is called Maghlubiyyat and Dawliyyat and all that. That is the negative aspect which is derived from Rahmaniyat and Rahimiyyat, but not in the positive sense, but in the negative sense. You are given a very clear directive. You are shown a very clear path, and a straight path. As I told you, it opens with Alham and passes through Rububiyat and entering Rahmaniyat and Rahimiyat, ultimately reaches God. So if you ignore this path, you will still reach Allah. You will still reach Malik Yawmiddin, but without the benefits of these attributes. And when you reach Him without the benefits of these attributes, that is hell. That is all that the negative sense derived from the same attributes, not positively, negatively. So in the latter part of Surah Al-Fatiha, light will be shed on this aspect. But for the time being, let's remain limited to the first sense of the word, that is the positive sense. The first sense of the attribute, that is the positive sense. Or another way of looking at this co-relationship is something which the history tells us, but very seldom people think of that. The fact is that whenever a religion appears on earth, in its wake it always leaves kingdoms and great rules. No religion, however poorly started, can be quoted which did not leave in its way a great kingdom. Even the worldly kingdom, I mean. Look at the Jews. Their early history tells us that they were extremely poor and downtrodden people, such as had been deprived of all their human rights for a very long time. So that when they were ultimately reminded to get their rights, fundamental human rights, they did not even have the courage to extend their hands to reach the rights. At one stage they told Moses, "You and your Lord go and fight for us. Once you have obtained all the rights, then we'll share the rights with you." So that was the state of servitude to which they had been reduced by a long period of tyranny and oppression. Yet, look at the end. When ultimately they decided to pass through the gates of Ham, they reached Malik Yawmiddin. And there, in that sense, Malik Yawmiddin is not Malik whom we will meet after death. But as I said earlier, Malik has his manifestations on this earth as well. So Malik means the owner, the proprietor, the king. So when you join your Lord as the proprietor and the king, your enemies are excluded from that kingdom, and the kingdom is bestowed upon you. All that was possessed by your Lord becomes yours, and you share the malikiyat of your Lord. So that glad tidings is not only for the day of judgment, that is after death, life after death, but it also applies to this world. And the history bears us out that this is exactly what happened. Now look at the kingdom of David and Solomon. Read their account either in the Bible or in the Holy Quran. You will come to realize how Allah gave the Jews a share in His Malikiyah. And what a grand empire came into being. It was carved out of the same poor people who had completely forgotten the art of ruling. So a time comes when the poor people are given the kingdoms of Lord because they reach Malik Yawmiddin through this route. Look at the early Christianity. They were so helpless people and so much persecuted by everyone around, the Jews as well as the Romans, that they have a long history of torture extending over 300 years. They were burnt alive, they were deprived of all their possessions, they were thrown to to the mercy of hungry wild animals. And people sat around, and whenever the animal tore them open or devoured them, people started laughing all around in the arenas. That was not a sight of terror for them, that was a sight enjoyable to them. This was the state of their despondency, and this was the state of cruelty of the people with whom they came into contact. But the same people were given the opportunity to share Allah's Malikiyyah, and today you are sitting in one of those kingdoms, which in fact is a reward of the early sacrifices. This great Christendom, which doesn't end, on which sun does not set. Even the Russian Empire, the atheist Russian Empire, is a child of this Christian Empire. So almost it ascends over the whole of the globe. This is the reward of not any deeds of the present-day Christians, in fact. If you know your history of religion, without fail you will come to the conclusion that this is again a reward of the early sacrifices of those Christians who were deprived of all their fundamental rights. But when God shared His Malikiyyah with those people, this is what happened. These kingdoms emerged. So the same is the phenomena of Malikiyyah applicable to all other religions everywhere in the world. Followers of Krishna also became victorious, and ultimately they were made the rulers of India. Followers of Confucius were made emperors of China. Same thing happened to the followers of Zoroaster. So ultimately, as the Holy Quran tells us, this is an unchangeable rule. That ultimately the land will be possessed and inherited by those who follow God and are righteous. And this promise is kept despite the fact that people are no longer righteous. This is the graciousness of Allah. You have forgotten Him, you have turned your back, but He has not forgotten you, He has not turned His back on you, and He keeps true to His promises. For the sake of those who served Him early, in the first part of that history of that religion. And people think that it is something of their own. They are possessing these great worldly rewards because they have attained something on their own, with their own skill and with their own labor. This is wrong. It is always a reward from Allah for the sacrifices of the early people. This is why Ahmadis should be always reminded to remember them in their prayers, and also keep constant and faithful to Allah. If they remain faithful to Allah, and if they are mindful to the services of the early pious people, it will help them keep to the right path for a much longer period than the previous people ever did. Now the last thing to be told to you about this is a very interesting prophecy. This is derived from this verse. If you observe, go back to history again, once again, you will observe that the smaller the domain of the religion was, the kingdom which was offered to those people was in direct relationship to that religion. The bigger that religion was, the bigger was the domain. Wider were the persecutions of the people, wider was the reward of kingdoms which came from Allah's throne. So Christendom has been extended to a very big part of the globe because of all the religions in the history. Christianity is the one which suffered most and more widely, and for much longer period than any other known followers of adherents of any religion. So to that extent, the reward was much bigger and wider. Even apart from that, Surah Al-Fatiha also contains the key to the understanding of the reward in store for us. We follow Hazrat Muhammad Mustafa sallallahu alaihi wasallam, particularly the followers in the second advent of Hazrat Muhammad Mustafa sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Because, as I told you, Rahmaniyat means the declaration of a religion which is global. And before this, Allah never manifested Himself as Rahman to any religion previous to Islam. So, if you have traveled the path to Allah through this Rahmaniyat, which means Rahmaniyat covering the entire globe, when you will reach Maliki Yawmiddin, that Malikiyat would be much wider in its influence, in direct relationship to the Rahmaniyat. So this is exactly what Hazrat Masih Maud has said in one of his tafasir. And he says that every prophet shared the Malikiyat of God, but not to the full extent. Every prophet was given a share in Malikiyat of Allah relatively, according to his own reach, according to the contents of the message and extent of that message. In that reference, he was made a sort of Malik. But the only prophet who shared full Malikiyat on earth with Allah and will also share the Malikiyat with Allah on the Day of Judgment is Hazrat Muhammad Mustafa sallallahu alaihi wasallam. In the Day of Judgment, he will be Shafi. And Shafi also has the sense of Malikiyat in it. When ordinary rules and regulations of forgiveness do not apply, when a criminal is condemned, and some shareholder, for example, says, all right, I say leave it and forgive it. That is the sense of shafaat. This is why to pray for forgiveness is permitted even to the most sinful. But to go for shafaat is not even permitted to the prophets unless Allah Himself tells. So Allah wants to keep His oneness to Himself as well as to share something with His prophets of His own accord, as a grace to them, not as their basic rights. So this is why shafaat is not permitted to anyone, except to those prophets to whom Allah permits Himself. So Hazrat Muhammad Mustafa sallallahu alaihi wasallam will be made Shafi Yawm al-Qiyamah, on the Day of Judgment, and Shafi for all the people. That shows that he will share Malikiyat with God as none else before him had ever shared. And this will apply equally to this world. There are many people who are dreaming of world governments. There are Jews, for instance, who are dreaming of world government. There are Christians who are dreaming of world government. There are atheist communists who are dreaming of world government. But none except Ahmadis will be given the world government. This I assure you. This is a written fact. Because you are the people who are the second manifestation of Islam, through which Malikiyat will be manifested, through whom the Malikiyat and ultimate Malikiyat of Allah will be manifested on this earth. So the only world government which will come into being, ultimately, will be a world government possessed by Ahmadis, not because they would deserve it on their own, but because Hazrat Muhammad Mustafa sallallahu alaihi wasallam has been promised this in Surah Al-Fatiha, that a time is going to come on this earth as well, when you, my beloved Muhammad, you are going to share my Malikiyat over the whole globe. So whichever people will be representing you at that time, they will be given the kingdom of the entire universe. So that is the glad tidings to which I referred, which appears from this study of interrelationship of these attributes of Surah Fatiha. Now we come to the second part. Why I said second part is because this is exactly how Hazrat Muhammad Mustafa sallallahu alaihi wasallam has divided Surah Fatiha. He tells us that God has divided Surah Fatiha in two parts. One he is kept to himself, the first part, and the second is devoted for his servants. So in the first half of Surah Fatiha, which we have just finished, the attributes of God are mentioned. And in the second part, whatever is the responsibility of man after studying those attributes is mentioned. But if you consider it further, you will come to know that ultimately, if you become the true servants of your Lord, both the first part belongs to you as well as the second part. If you do not be true servants of your Lord and choose to be the servants of Satan or rather than your Lord, then neither the first part belongs to you nor the second part belongs to you. And this has been mentioned in the Surah Fatiha itself. Now we enter the verses Iyaka na'budu wa Iyaka nasta'in. When you reach Maliki Yawmiddin, as I told you before, it also gives you the message that you do not possess anything. When you reach Malik, you are suddenly dispossessed of everything. And all your anan, all your ego is completely destroyed. You are left with nothing except to walk through Allah's grace. And if you want to become possessor of things, you have to turn to Him. And that through ibadah. Iyaka na'budu means that, oh Lord, we have understood the whole message. We don't anything, we don't own anything, we don't deserve anything, but we want to share it. So make us deserving of this. And hamd and ibadah are one and the same thing. The door of hamd is referred to in this Iyaka na'budu. Oh God, give us opportunity. We want to praise you. We want to worship you. And to worship none other. This is Iyaka na'budu. But suddenly the moment the believer is reminded that you have been totally dispossessed. You don't even have the strength to worship Allah on your own. So the second part of the verse comes to his aid. Iyaka nasta'in. Of course, we want to worship you very much, to the exclusion of every other being. But we also know, learning our message from the early part of Surah Fatiha, that unless you give us strength and power to worship you, we will not be able to do so. So, Iyaka nasta'in also gives you the strength which you had lost completely. And Iyaka na'budu makes you worthy of entering the same door which was opened to you by Surah Fatiha, the first verse of Alhamd, the first word Alhamd of Surah Fatiha. Then the journey starts and you enter, as I told you, the straight road of Rububiyyat, Rahmaniyat and Rahimiyat in the right manner. So the next prayer is Ihdina as-siratal mustaqim. Which sirat al-mustaqim? The one which has been mentioned earlier. The sirat which takes you through Rububiyyat and Rahmaniyat and Rahimiyat to Maliki Yawmiddin. This is exactly what sirat is. And the converse of this is Rububiyyat and Zawliyat, as mentioned in the second part of the verse. Ihdina as-siratal mustaqim, siratal lazina an'amta alayhim. The Sirat al-Mustaqim is both the one which will go through Zawliyat and Mawzubiyat in one sense. In one sense, Sirat al-Mustaqim ends with Ihdina Sirat al-Mustaqim, Sirat al-Ladina An'amta alayhim. But if you broaden the meaning of the Sirat and refer back to your reaching Malik ultimately, willy-nilly, then this Sirat will acquire a wider meaning. And it will also be covered by that Sirat which is Mawzubiyat, Sirat of Mawzubiyat and Sirat of Zawliyat. Because man has to reach God either through Sirat al-Mustaqim of An'amta alayhim or through the Sirat of Zawliyat and Mawzubin and Zawliyat. So this is why it says, Ihdina Sirat al-Mustaqim, but that Sirat, which is the Sirat of the righteous people, on whom you have showed your benefits and favors before us. Not that Sirat al-Mustaqim, which is the Sirat of Mawzubin and Zawliyat. Now, when we understood the meaning of Sirat through the first part of Surah Al-Fatiha, the converse exactly is the Sirat of Mawzubin and the Sirat of Zawliyat. Who are Mawzubin? Hazrat Muhammad Mustafa sallallahu alayhi wa sallam himself again comes to our aid to give us the true perspective of Mawzubin. He tells us that Mawzubin are the Jews, not the Jews of early days, of the early part of their history, but the Jews of the latter part of their history, when they became stone-hearted and when they dissociated from all the qualities of Rahmaniyat. To conceive of Mawzub alayhim as Jews, as they have been described in the Holy Quran, is exactly the converse of Rahmaniyat. Rahmaniyat means forgiveness, mercy, to give even without asking, to be extremely beneficent to the maximum degree, beyond which nothing can be conceived. This is Rahmaniyat. But the Jews of the latter days were exactly the opposite of these. They were whatever was the negative of Rahmaniyat. So, naturally, they were Mawzub alayhim. So, that also tells us that in fact the attributes of Allah are basically positive attributes. And the negative attributes are derived from the absence of those positive attributes. It is like there being light or not no light. Darkness in itself is no positive value. It is the absence of light. So when Allah becomes Muntaqim or the punisher, it is not a quality, a positive quality with Allah. It is the absence of certain attribute of Allah which is in a way imposed upon him by his servants, by his creation. When mankind ignores a certain attribute of Allah carrying a positive sense, then what is left for them is the negative natural result of that, the absence of that attribute. Like if you close your doors to light, you will be left in darkness. But that darkness is not a value in itself. So this also solves the age-old problem of attributing some vicious or bad qualities to Allah. People have been trying to solve this problem from ages past, that if Allah holds both the attributes of being kind and unkind, being just and unjust, being one who rewards others and being one who deprives others of their reward, then Allah is responsible for everything. So why to punish anybody? Why this process of reward and punishment at all. We don't possess anything then. So many schools of philosophers came into being because of this confusion. And at a time, this philosophy was also very popular in India. Like Caliph, the great poet, describes this in one of his very famous couplets. He says, "ना हम मजबूरों पर ये तोहमत है मुख्तारी की, चाहे हैं तो आठ करे हैं हमको अबस बदनाम की।" यहाँ के स्याह और सफेद में अपना दाखिल जो है सो इतना है, रात को जूं तू सुबह किया, रात को रो रो सुबह किया, और सुबह को जूं तू शाम किया. Siyah Safed is played fun. It's a beautiful verse, playing fun on the words Siyah and Safed, and it's night and day, but it's very difficult to translate into English, so I'll leave it alone. But in the first verse, he says, and this is the philosophy to which I was referring. He says, "Na hum majbooron par ye tuhmat hai muhtari." It's an allegation to helpless we, the helpless servants of Allah, that we possess will, that we possess something in the scheme of things. We do not possess anything, not even the will. Chahe hai so aap kare. Whatever Allah wants to do, He does Himself. Humko abas badnaam ki. And we are here only to earn the bad name for whatever Allah decides. But when you understand the meaning of Surah Fatiha truly, this fallacy is made clear to you. You no longer suffer or fall to the pit of this fallacy. The Surah Fatiha does not mention any attribute of Allah in the negative sense. You have read that 4 attributes have been mentioned: Rabb, Rahman, Rahim, and Malik. There is no essence of ghazab or punishment or intiqam or destruction in any of these attributes. And yet it is claimed that Surah Fatiha is Ummul Kitab, and these attributes are the Ummul Sifat. They contain the key to every attribute of Allah. So because the positive attributes are mentioned, this is a clear message to mankind that the negative attributes are created by you. They are manifested by Allah, but because you have lost touch with the positive attributes, and the resultant is a negative attribute, which is not in the first place essential quality of God. The essential quality is only goodness, and the quality of punishment and the negative quality is derived from your action. So this is again explained by Hazrat Mirza Tahir Ahmad in one of his most beautiful sayings, which is such a beautiful saying that it contains the entire gist of the Holy Quran in one sentence. It says, "Ana inda zanni abdi." That Allah tells Rasulullah to give this message to the whole mankind. "Ana inda zanni abdi." I become whatever my servants think of me. If they want, they conceive me as Rabb and Rahman and Rahim, I will manifest myself in that form. But if they dissociate or choose to dissociate from me in this regard, and they don't come into contact with the Rububiyyat or Ahmadiyya, then I will appear to them as they have conceived me. That is, to the converse of this attribute. Now we go back to Iyyaka na'budu, because we did not exhaust this. Na'budu has to be understood before we have the full import of the meaning of Iyyaka na'budu. What is ibadah? Some people think that ibadah is simply worshipping Allah and praising Him. And many an ignorant person has objected to this by saying that if God created for him, that is a very selfish approach. And when we do not worship him, he punishes us. So whether we like to worship him or not, whether there is praise within or not, we are bound to worship him under the pain of punishment. So this is not what ibadah means at all. Ibadah is quite a different thing, and you have to understand the meaning. Ibadah, for example, is described in Arabic as an attitude of following someone with complete submission and volition, to follow a course with all your heart, and so repeatedly that you leave deep imprints of your treading that path repeatedly and often. That is when you follow a certain course. The Arabs use the word ibadah for that as well. Ta'abbada sirat means one who followed a course repeatedly and so often for his own benefit, not for the benefit of somebody else, but because he derived benefit out of following that particular path, that he leaves lasting imprints of his walking and extensively using that road or that path. This is ta'abbada. So that is to follow someone with volition, with an end to gain something from that. So ibadat is to follow your Lord. And the attributes which have been told to you earlier, they create that desire in you. There is no question of any compulsion. If you understand what God is so beautiful and so complete that when you truly understand Him, then you follow Him. That is ibadah and nothing else. So ibadah of compulsion is no ibadah at all. Man has not been created for an ibadah of compulsion. The Holy Quran tells you that the one hero you should follow is your Lord. And this has been mentioned in the Holy Quran in another verse as well, where it says, Sibghat Allah wa man ahsanu min Allah sibghat. The attributes of Allah, or the colors of Allah. So if you want to be colorful, to acquire beauty for yourself, then follow the colors of Allah, that is the attributes of Allah. So that is the message of early part of Surah Al-Fatiha, when you enter the second part. And when you say Iyyaka na'budu, you say with reference to the early part of Surah Al-Fatiha. That is to say, O God, we want to be a Rabb, a miniature Rabb, of course, within our own limitations. But having come to know you, it's impossible to resist to that desire to become a Rabb. And we want to be the Rahmans, miniatures of course. But once having known Rahmaniyat, it is impossible to resist that. And so on and so forth. They want to be Rahim, they want to be Malik. And when they want to be those things, they ponder over these questions. And when you now refer to what you read in Surah, in your prayers, you will be surprised to find that these four attributes have been shown in some way or another in the recitations of your prayers. Your prayers remain within the four walls of these attributes. This is why it is called Ibadah, the Islamic Salah. Because they are covered by Rububiyyat, whatever you say and demand of Allah or beg of Allah has already been described in Rububiyyat and Rahmaniyat and Rahimiyat and Malikiyat. So this is one way of looking at Iyyaka na'budu. And other way is by looking at its meaning as meaning of Abd in relationship to a Lord. Abd means a slave, and a total slave.
a slave which has no property of his own, no possession of his own. So this meaning is also derived from Malikiyya, the ultimate of all the attributes of Allah. And Malikiyya is such a strong attribute that it contains all the other attributes as well. Everything is concentrated in Malikiyya, because it dispossesses everything else and every other property. So all properties are combined in Malikiyya, attracted towards Malikiyya. And when you look at Malikiyya from this angle, it is the opposite of the black hole. It is the bright hole of the universe, of the religious universe. Like the black holes that fall and consume everything and make it disappear to the rest of the world. So Malikiyya means all the attributes which converge and disappear into the bright hole of Malik. And to the rest of the world, nothing is left. That is the total dispossession of the creation and the total possession of Allah. So even the attributes of Allah are all concentrated in Malikiyya in this sense. In this sense, He becomes the Lord and we become the total slave. We don't have anything. We ourselves are your possession, O Lord. So we want to be true slaves, because if a lord is happy with his slave, he makes him share his possessions. This is a phenomenon witnessed by man everywhere. If you serve your lord well to his pleasure, to the extent that you will be able to please him, you will begin to share in his possessions. So this is why there are certain slaves known in history who shared the kingdoms of their lords with them. They were given full trust. And that reminds us of Ayaz, of a Mahmud. Ayaz was a slave of that time, of that nation. And Mahmud was his master, the emperor or the king. But Ayaz had left everything of his own, submitted everything of his ego to the will of his Lord, with the result that Mahmud shared his kingdom with him, to the jealousy of all the rest. So whether you are jealous then or not, if you become a true servant, then you possess all that is possessed by your Lord, ultimately. In this sense, Hazrat Muhammad Mustafa sallallahu alaihi wasallam is the only person on earth who was ever given birth by any woman who possessed to the full the lordship of his Lord, because he became a perfect slave. So from this angle, if you want to learn the art of Abudiyyat, that is the art of worshipping Allah, you should learn that art from Hazrat Muhammad Mustafa sallallahu alaihi wasallam, because the only person who is given the title of Abd in its consummate sense is Hazrat Muhammad Mustafa sallallahu alaihi wasallam. There are many titles given to various other prophets. Isa is called Ruhullah, Adam is called Safiullah, Ibrahim is called Khalilullah, and Musa is called Kalimullah. And various followers of these people take pride in these things. What a great reward from Allah to our Prophet. And apparently, the lowest name is given, apparently, to the worldly people, to Hazrat Muhammad Mustafa. He is Abdullah. Is Ama Abdullah. This is said in Buddhism. And these people don't know that they have been completely deceived. They have been completely deprived of the full meaning of this word. Abd in relation to Allah, when it is a kamil and true Abd, means possessor of whatever is possessed by the Lord. he becomes the manifestation of the Lord. This is why in another place, the Holy Quran tells us, In kuntum tuhibbun Allah, Qul in kuntum tuhibbun Allah, fattabi'uni yuhibbukum Allah. This is the expression of Ahmadiyya, as witnessed in Hazrat Muhammad Mustafa Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. There are so many people who claim that they are true Abd of Allah. And Abd also means one who loves men, who completely follows, and in the expressions of love, this is the greatest expression which can be used by any poet or a lover. Ultimately one says, oh my beloved, I am your servant, I am your slave. What else? I am nothing. All that I have belongs to you. And this is the maximum I want to achieve in relation to you. So Ahmadiyya also stands for ultimate love, for extreme love. And this is the meaning of Ahmadiyya which has been mentioned in this verse. The Holy Quran tells Hazrat Muhammad Mustafa Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam that there are so many claimants to my love. There are so many claimants to my Ahmadiyya and worship and love. But how can they know that they are on the right path? How can they know that they truly love me? I have made you a model as a true lover. And I have made this easy for those claimants to judge whether they love me truly or not. If their love is just a mythical and romantic love, with no reality in their love, then that love does not mean anything to me. The only claim of love that means anything to me is the reality of love. And that reality can only be judged by this model, Hazrat Muhammad Mustafa Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. So he is permitted by Allah to declare to the whole world, In kuntum tuhibbun Allah. If you are truly true in your claim of love for Allah, Allah will not love you until you have followed the path of Hazrat Muhammad Mustafa Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Now, to follow the path is Ahmadiyya. So when I said Ahmadiyya is mentioned and explained in this verse, this is exactly what has been done in this verse. On our own, we could not learn the path of Ahmadiyya. In nutshell, it has been described, made easy for us, a road made easy for us. That alright, whatever you call Ahmadiyya, love or following a certain path, here is my beloved Prophet. You begin to follow him, and I begin to love you in response to your love. Now that shows that your love is false without following him. It is proved false. This is why I won't love you. The moment you begin to follow a true love, you prove the validity of your love. And to the same degree, you will be recipient of my love. This is what has been said in this verse. Now, what is Ahmadiyya? Again, in reference to Hazrat Muhammad Mustafa Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, it has been explained in another verse. Allah says, Qul inna salati. Again, the word Qul is the guiding or monitoring word here. Declare to the whole world, Qul inna salati wa nusuki wa mahyaya wa mamati lillahi rabbil alamin. All my salah, that is worship, wa nusuki, and all my sacrifices. Ibadat comprises two wings. One, ibadat, a personal worship of Allah, and the other, sacrifice of all that you love best, for the sake of Allah. So here, the ibadat is described in these words. Qul inna salati wa nusuki. And in nutshell, in short, mahyaya wa mamati, my very life and my very death. Everything belongs to my Lord and nothing belongs to me. This is Abudiyyah. As I explained earlier, the word Abudiyyah, this has been given authority by the Holy Quran, that meaning which I attributed to the Abudiyyah is exactly true. Because Hazrat Muhammad Mustafa sallallahu alayhi wa sallam is presented as Ab and Abd Kamil. And whatever he did has been described by Allah Himself in these verses. So the first verse also applies to Abd Kamil and his conduct of love, his distinctive feature of love. And the other part also belongs to Abudiyyah, because in another way Hazrat Muhammad Mustafa sallallahu alaihi wasallam has been described, and the Qul tells us that it is the declaration for the whole world to follow. This is why the word Qul has been used. Now, if you look at these two distinctive features of Abudiyyah, that is worship of Allah, you will come to know that the easiest and the most wonderful and the most enjoyable way of worshipping Allah is through love. Because love makes your sacrifices easy. And instead of feeling pain in your sacrifices, you begin to have a sort of pleasure, to enjoy your sacrifices and derive pleasure from the sacrifice. So ibadat becomes a source of pleasure instead of a source of torture. This is what the stage which was reached by Hazrat Muhammad Mustafa sallallahu alaihi wasallam through love. Because without love, you cannot enjoy hardship. The only way you can enjoy hardship is through learning how to love. So Allah tells us that Hazrat Muhammad Mustafa sallallahu alaihi wasallam, by loving me, has made the path of your love so easy. Love me as He loved. Then what you will receive as a bargain will not be a pain, not a labor, but only my love. The easiest path of worship is the path of love. This is the message. And this is exactly what has been explained by Hazrat Masih Maud in some of his beautiful verses. He says, "Ay Mahabbat, ajab asar numaya kar, zakhmo marham, ze rahe yaar to yaksan kar, ta na diwana shuda, hosh naam basaram, ay janu girde tu gargam, ke che ihsan kar, ay Mahabbat, ajab asar numaya kar, O love, you have revealed new avenues to me. You have taken the curtain off great things. Ajab asar, new things have been opened up to me. New vistas are being opened up to me by love, and he is addressing love as such. Zakhmo marham barahe yaar to yaksan kar. In the path of my love, you have made the wound exactly as the marham is to others. Marham means the balm applied to the wounds, the healing balm. So the Hazrat Masih Maud says that, "Oh love, what a miracle you have shown, that in the path of my beloved now, to get wounded is exactly as the same as to get the balm of healing. And the pleasure I derive from my wound is the same as pleasures derived from the application of balm, that is love of Allah." So that distinction between the disease and cure, the wound and its healing, is completely removed. That barrier is removed by love. Then he says, Tana Divan Shudam, Hoshnam Islam. Until the time when I became totally mad in my love, I had attained no wisdom at all. The only wisdom which I attained was after I had reached that state of losing all my wisdom for the sake of my beloved. Whatever of wisdom I possessed, I sacrificed for the sake of my beloved. And then a new wisdom was given to me. That was the wisdom worthy of awakening. And Allah, oh love, you have granted me this. A junoo girde tu gardam keshe sankar. Oh junoo, oh madness of love, I want to circle around you, make circuits around you, like people make circuits around Kaaba, because you are the greatest benefactor that I know. So this is what has been described in kuntum tuhibbuna Allah fattabi'uni yuhibbukum. All your worship will be made so easy, it will be made playable if you follow the path of Hazrat Mustafa sallallahu alaihi wasallam, because he has set that path which makes all the difficulties in the ways of Allah as palatable things to you, the things you desire most. Now, once this happens, you are totally dispossessed of yourself. You lose your identity. That is again a manifestation of love, rather a complete manifestation of love. So in the second verse, the result of this is mentioned. In the first part, the method. In the first verse, the method of worshipping is described to you. In the second verse, where it says, "Kul inna salati wa nusuki wa mahyaya wa mamati lillahi rabbil alamin," the end product of worship is mentioned. That after I followed the path of love of Allah, I found myself totally dispossessed of all I had. Inna salati wa nusuki. My worship also belongs to Allah. My sacrifices belong to Allah. My very life belongs to Allah. And many a time when I die in this life for Allah, that also belongs to Allah. Mamati does not mean the end death only, but many a death one suffers through during a lifetime for the sake of Allah. That is described as mamati. So, what is the end product of that love? Is that enviable to be totally dispossessed? Apparently not. So why to follow the course of this love? But again, this is not all. Something else is to follow now. Allah tells Hazrat Muhammad Mustafa sallallahu alaihi wasallam, once declaring that he has himself dispossessed of all his qualities for my sake. Ma ramayata is ramayata. Walakin Allah innama yubayyunaka alladhina yubayyunaka innama yubayyuna Allah yadullah. O my servant, you worship me in the completest possible sense of worship, with the result that you love me to the extreme. You loved me to the extreme, and you sacrificed all you possessed for my sake. So when I promise that I will love in return, so whatever I have, I am going to give you. And you will become my representative on earth. You will become a sort of Allah, not Allah in itself, but a sort of Allah, because now you possess all that is possessed by your beloved. Because in the relationship of lover and beloved, this distinction of possession is removed totally. This is an artificial barrier in all other relationships. The relationship of love, it does not exist. The relationship of love is described elsewhere by a poet, Mantushad Shudam or Mantoshudam. to man shudi. Man tan shudam to jan shudi. Takas na goya digri. Badazi man digaram to digri. That man to shudam to man shudi. I have become yours. You have become mine. Man tan shudam to jan shudi. I have become body. You have become soul. So that lest anyone else should say that you are different and I am different. So when Hazrat Muhammad Mustafa sallallahu alaihi wasallam was told that it was Allah who did this, not you. It was the hand of Allah which was over the hands of those who got initiated at your hands, not your hands. This was the reward of that complete slavery, that question. And this is what we pray to Allah to allow us to do, to give us strength to do. And the same manifestation of Allah was witnessed in his relationship to Hazrat Masih Maud, where he said, Anta ana minka wa anta minni, or anta minni wa ana minka. These worldly Maulvis, these earthly people, they don't know the meaning either of that innama yubayyi'unallah or this verse. And they take pleasure in censuring Hazrat Masih Maud for this revelation which is no fault of his. It was a revelation made by Allah. And Allah said, I am yours now and you are mine. They intentionally distort the meaning by translating this ilham of Masih Maud differently. They say, Hazrat Masih Maud was told by Allah, Ana minka, I am from you, within you. This is not the meaning, because min here is a possessive min. Ana can be attributed to ka directly. You cannot say in Arabic ana ka. So min only means I am yours and you are mine. So the same reward has been mentioned differently to Hazrat Masih Maud. If you want to learn the art of ibadah, this is the ibadah taught to us by Surah Al-Fatiha. And this is what we pray for, Iyaka Na'budu. And here the word is not, the prayer is taught to us in the plural, not in the singular. Nabudu, we want to love, it will mean we want to follow. That means as a whole people. Because there is one leader, Hazrat Muhammad Mustafa sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and this verse gives the description of a procession of lovers following one lover, as if one Majnu created thousands and millions of Majnus, and they started following the path of that Majnu and said, Nabudu, Nabudu. We are following you, who are following? So this is the ibadah which is taught to us by Surah Al-Fatiha. And in Iyaka Nasta'in, we are taught again humility and told or reminded that you won't be able to achieve this noble end, this lofty end, unless you constantly seek Allah's aid, without which you cannot attain any station of nearness of Allah. Assalamu alaikum.